All right, welcome to the Valle Podcast, episode number 1. I am extremely honored to have our guest here with us today. He's a baseball coach, a softball coach, social media influencer, two-time Union County Educator of the Year, I believe, if I remember correctly, and actually an ambassador for our Valle brand. And then more importantly, he's a good friend of ours. So I'm excited to have him as our first guest. So without further ado, Dave Steinman, thanks for coming, man.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, man, that's awesome. So I when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about with you, it was I kind of want to go back a little bit to when you were younger. I was listening to some of your other podcasts that you've done with other people as I was doing some research. And I kind of caught a little bit about your relationship with your father. And it seemed like he was really involved in your baseball career, and it seemed like there was kind of a tight relationship there. Am I right about reading that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Tell me about that relationship a little bit.
Sure. I mean, growing up, family's relatively small. It was me, dad, mom, and sister. Sister's 3 years older than me, so growing up, obviously, you wanted to do everything that your older sibling does. And she played baseball up until the 8th grade, so my dad coached her baseball team up until she was 13 years old. So right from when she was 8U, I was 5, running out on the field. And I was in practice. I was running around like just the little brother there that just wants to be a part of it. And it kind of just continued as I got older. So as my sister transitioned to high school and into college, obviously it was just me and him. So we used to spend a lot of time together just out in the park, throwing batting practice. I mean, we used to have a park in town where he'd just pull his car lights up. He'd pull the car up and shine them right on the cage. And
that was awesome.
We just sit there all night and go out on the field and just hit ground balls. It's more of a bonding session.
Absolutely. And that's what, honestly, it's one of my fondest memories of baseball is that relationship. And I think that's so important. I think a lot of times when you're in it, you don't really think about it as much. No. But at our age now, when you look back, it's like those are some of the better times.
You take it for granted when you're that age. It's kind of just like expected. Like 5 o'clock, we're going out to the park after we have dinner. We're going to go hit. Now, like you think about it, I try to tell kids all the time, like if your mom and dad want to go out and play with you, it doesn't matter what they're saying. Just go enjoy the time together right. And go do things that you both like to do together.
Did he play baseball growing up? Was he like a baseball guy?
He was more of a basketball person, believe it or not. So like that's kind of where I have my love for basketball as well. He used to play pickup basketball with me and my friends. We'd play 3-on-3 and 4-on-4, and he would be like doing all these old school tricks from when he was a kid. So he was always involved in athletics growing up. So he played a lot more basketball, coached a lot more basketball, but took a liking to baseball because of the interest my sister and I both had in it.
Did he give you instruction like with baseball? Like
yeah.
Did he pick up from other people, or was it just more of like he just being an athlete?
No,
he kind of knew.
He always loved baseball. He would watch it, and then as my sister started to get around different coaches and different people, he would listen and he would buy books and he would read books on
really.
How to, yeah, oh yeah. Uh-huh. He loved coaching. Like he coached well beyond my sister and I's playing days in town.
That's
still
cool.
Lives in the town. Like he still comes out and watches the kids play. Who he's kind of outgrown everybody that's there now, but there was a time where he coached up until they were like seniors, and he would just watch them play for years upon years. Yeah,
that's
he loves
neat.
it.
Basketball? Did he play basketball?
He used to play. He played basketball. He played at Hillside High School in Union County, New Jersey, and he loved basketball. And
did he coach high school travel?
Never coached. No,
never coached. Just kind of individual, just like helping guys or whatever.
He used to have his own women's clothing store. So like he wasn't in the athletics, the educational world, and then after that he was a limo driver, and then after that he started working for the state of New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
That's about as far back as I can remember. So
that's neat.
He's been with the state for 20 years now.
What type of was he a guy like after your games, the type of conversations in the car? Like what type of conversations was in the Steinman car on the ride home?
It depended on the day. I mean, I remember vividly after an 8th grade basketball game, I guess I was a little too confrontational with an official, and that car ride home, I got lectured the entire time about how I'm wasting energy on the wrong things. I need to focus on my play and not what the refs are calling and not calling. So it was more along the lines of that, like grooming me to be a young man, not so much about, hey, you should have used your left hand on that layup and things like that. So same thing with baseball. He used to stand behind the backstop and wouldn't like coach me during the game, but afterwards more about how I can be better as a teammate, as a player, like things like that. Like kind of more life lessons. Yeah. But he would pick apart anything that I was wrong in.
How did you respond to that?
When I was younger, I used to get very defensive and like argumentative, but as we said coming over here, I'm not a confrontational person, so like I would be like snippy, like I'd be like short, but
Would you shut down? Were you like a guy that was shut down?
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to have the conflict, so you'd end up just
taking it. And my sister's the opposite. Where like she'll take it, but like she'll also voice
back
her
she'll give a little back. Yeah.
I'm the complete opposite. Like I'll take it, and then I'll reflect on it, and then I kind of like, all right, I can see where he's coming from.
That's neat. That's so funny. How's your relationship with your sister? Are you tight?
Oh yeah.
Really?
I would say
Still to this day?
Yeah, to this day. I mean, she lives in Pennsylvania now, so we're a little bit a ways away, but we text each other, call each other regularly, just to kind of keep tabs on each other and like, what are we doing? Where are we going, and things like that.
She was a pretty good softball player, right? I mean, I saw something that like she had like some home run records.
So she actually, I wouldn't want to say she preferred basketball, but she was heavily invested in basketball much of her youth years, and then when she started to play softball, kind of like went back and forth. So she was a legitimate two-sport athlete. She went to Moravian in Bethlehem for her first 2 years of college and played college basketball, and then transferred to Kane, which is back home by us, and played softball for another 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So at Kane, she held, I don't know if she still does, it was like the single season home run record.
And career, I think, too.
Yeah.
As I read something that was
if you ever saw my sister,
well.
she's 5 foot tall.
Really?
Yeah, so you wouldn't strike her as a home run hitter, but something clicked when she went there, and that's what she did.
What position?
She was an infielder.
Okay.
She was a shortstop growing up, but then when she went to college, she played a lot more second base.
Oh, that's cool.
Like most people.
Yeah, that happens. That happens. Did your dad ever coach one of your teams?
Up until high school.
So really?
He used to coach our town teams.
How did you like that?
I liked it. I mean, there was times where I didn't like it because he was definitely a little more critical of me than some of the other people. But I think that's most parents, and I think now kids take it as like they don't like playing for them instead of trying to understand what the parents actually trying to do. But there's definitely no favoritism there.
I've always found that like parents either go one or the, like they can go this way or that way. Either if they're coaching their own kids, they're either extremely hard on their own kids, like the over the top because they don't want anyone to, believe that they're giving them favoritism or anything like that, or they are favorites to their kids, right? You know what I mean? And it always seems like it's one or the other.
Yeah, I don't remember there being favoritism. I mean, we used to work at it, so like I felt that I always earned things that I've gotten.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess if you're in the other shoes, you can look at it from one way. But I remember vividly, we were warming up for a game, and he said something to me into the pregame that I didn't like. I was like 12. And the next ground ball he hit me, I took it and threw it over the backstop on purpose, like just as like all right, I'll show you.
What did you do after that?
I wasn't happy. I mean, I got lectured for a pretty long time after that, but in the moment I was upset and angry, so I just took it and launched it.
That's hilarious.
I was 12, so I mean, now I look back at it and be like, I couldn't imagine seeing another 12-year-old do that.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
I do remember doing that.
What do you what's like your general opinion of parent coaches? I mean, obviously you had a good one and you had a good experience, but like as a whole, what would be, if someone were to come and ask you like your general opinion of parent coaches, what would you say?
I think it's important. I think that people are transitioning out of like town ball, recreation ball. I think that from like an outsider's perspective, everybody that's in the room can teach you something. It's just a matter of, are you willing and open to listen to what's being said? So like the parent may not know the most about the sport, but they may be able to teach you other things as it relates to being a part of a team or not being the best at something. Like, I think it's good as long as the people that are in charge have the best interest of the kids at heart. Right. I think that too often and too early, kids are getting away from that, and you're specializing in things, and you kind of lose the element of community, and it becomes just about the individual instead of the team, which is why like the Little League World Series right now is fun to watch, because those are parent coaches that may not be in athletics or be in education. Like, they're just parents that love teaching and coaching. Yeah, that's like, I think of like parent coaches, because you always hear, I mean, like you give lessons, so I'm sure you hear it from some of your students occasionally. People will come in, they'll be upset, the coach's son is playing this position, and it's because of this or whatever. And and as an instructor, you're not watching games, you don't know, maybe the kid's the best, and and you just, it's just the way it is, right? I remember I was talking with my dad about it one time, and a lot of it's optics sometimes. Sometimes it's like, obviously there are parents that could be phenomenal coaches, clearly. My dad coached my high school team for 2 years, you know what I mean? And
And I think, you think he was a great coach. I mean, you had a great experience with your dad coaching. But it's the optics of it.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a parent, they're upset about something and it's like, oh, it's because it's his son. It's like, well, maybe it's not. Let me look at the other things that are going on.
Yeah.
Maybe that kid's putting work in, or maybe that kid's not putting work in. You're not watching during practice. So I remember when kids would always complain, coming in, I would always try to push it back a little bit, Now there are, on the flip side, there are instances of that. Like I think in our area when I was growing up, travel ball, like the way travel ball is now, was not a thing, right? So like Babe Ruth was a big thing. I don't know if that was big for you. Babe Ruth, right?
American Legion.
Right. So we had all those, and during, like, parents were coaching those. Like if I remember correctly, I think there was always a dad that was coaching, and I never remember having much of an issue with any of them.
Right.
But when I started getting into coaching, at least in our area, there was this thing called North Coast that came in, and it was basically, you didn't have to be from the same town anymore. It was like kind of the start of travel ball in our area. And I feel like that's when it really started to go downhill. It was like, one kid felt like he should have been the shortstop, and he wasn't playing shortstop on whatever team. So then his dad went off and started a new team, and now he was a shortstop. And then next thing you know, there's like 30 teams at the same age, and it's watered down. And I feel like a lot of, at least in our area, that happened a ton. Yeah. And then it kind of produced people who were unhappy with the situation. It's like, so like I get it. But a lot of times I feel like, with the parent coaches, it's more of just, we've just avoided, like I helped run a travel program for a while. We just try to avoid purely just from the optics standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, I was always taught growing up, like if you want something, you got to work for it. Like nothing's going to be handed to you. So like I try to remind parents of that. Like you may be in an environment where your son or daughter's not getting what they want in the moment, but what are they doing to change those circumstances that don't involve complaining about it? Yeah. Like, are they going and taking extra ground balls after practice? Are they asking for help? Are they seeking advice on how they can improve to get it? Like growing up, I wasn't handed anything. And I feel like anything that I've ever gotten, I've earned. So like, I try to remind them, like, you may not like it, but do something about it. Like change something that you're doing to make it impossible for that father, who's also the coach, to not put you at shortstop. Yeah. And if you don't get put at shortstop, well, so what? What are you going to do?
Right.
Go play third base and be really good at it.
Right.
Learn how to be a good teammate and be your best without having to necessarily get what you want.
Well, what's funny is that advice is good advice, whether it's a parent coach or not,
That's
right?
life.
Because that's life, right? And that's also, if you go on to play college baseball, it's the same thing. I don't know how many times I've had that conversation with college players, especially good ones, right? Where they're so used to being the starter, being at their position, and then they go to college and it's like, oh, you're going to sit the first 2 years, right? And they're calling up and saying, I'm frustrated, I can't. It's like, and that that advice you gave is the exact advice you still have to give.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, control what you can control, work on things, make it so that coach has to put you at that position, because ultimately coaches want to win more than anything.
And at that level, that's their job. So if they don't win, they're going to be looking for a new job.
Absolutely.
At high school, like I coach high school, like we want to win, but at the same time, like from the baseball side of things, we're trying to mold young men. Like we're trying to teach them about life skills and how you may be on a team where you're not getting what you want. Figure out a way to make it work, because you're not going to love every job that you have and love everybody that you work with. But if you want to be good at something, you got to figure out how to navigate your best self within those boundaries.
Absolutely. How important do you think it is for like a young athlete to have a father present in his development?
I think a parent would
I guess I should, not a father, but have an included parent that is involved.
I think it's important. I can speak from my upbringing. Like having a parent who has interests that you have makes the bonding experience so much easier, I should say. It's not forced. Like you can go out and shoot hoops, or you can go out and take ground balls, or just hit off the tee for a half hour and you just bonded.
Right.
I think they don't have to teach you anything, but if I'm taking 50 swings off the tee and we're talking about the day and, hey, the goal is to hit the ball off the back of the cage or field 10 in a row, like you're fine tuning your skills with maybe not focusing on your glove positioning or your glove presentation. Just catch 10 in a row and see if you can do it.
Yeah.
And if you can catch 10 in a row, you can have great hand-eye coordination. And then as you start to figure out how things work and how you get more mechanical. But back to the original question, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Somebody within the household that you can share interests with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've thought about this. I mean, again, I could be totally off. It's just more of a thought. But, I know, in the last 50 years, like families, there's like a stat that's like it's families with absent fathers, or families that don't have fathers living in the home is more than doubled in the last 50 years. And when I think about that, because I do think it's important, and it doesn't have to be a father, but a parent that's involved, I think is important, and shared interest. And a lot of times for boys, obviously a father, it's just more common or whatever, but obviously a girl with mom softball, mom could be the same way for her son. But I think is that also a contributing factor on private instruction, on the growth of private instruction, because of that decrease in that stat, where maybe private instruction could fill some of that void, right? Yeah. Like I know in when I used to do lessons a lot, like there was this one family that would bring their boy in. The mom was the sweetest lady, and just a single mother, and she had these really young boys, and actually her boy was the youngest lesson I ever gave. He was 4 years old.
Wow.
And I remember her bringing him in, and I said, he's too young for a lesson. Like we're not going to cover anything in this lesson. And I remember it broke my heart. But she goes, Dave, honestly, his dad's not involved, and I know nothing, and I can't even play catch with him. So like, I'm just bringing him here so you could play with him for a half hour.
Yeah.
And just to be like, basically for a half hour, I want you just to play catch with him, encourage him, get him some excitement about the game of baseball. And I was like, man, like that's heavy. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? But I wonder how often that happens. But so then it got me thinking, I was like, I wonder if private instruction can sometimes fill, some a void like that.
I think maybe that's why it grew. Has to do with like how much people are asked to work too. Like there's a lot of working parents that's a great point. 2 household working parents that work from 8 to 6 or 8 to 5, and they get home at 5 o'clock, and maybe they don't have the time and or energy and or resources. So it's easier if you have the financials to do it. You find somebody that you trust that can have that interaction with your son or daughter to get the competitive advantage. Like a lot of people do lessons not because they want it or they need it, but they see everybody else doing it. So they feel they have to keep up with everybody else. I see people and I'm like, we're going to work, like we're going to get you better, but you can benefit from just playing catch at home or throwing the ball off the wall or having somebody hit you ground balls. Like we're not going to dive into mechanical adjustments because you're still learning how to step right, left, and catch. Like basic athletic fundamental skills that aren't necessarily need to be taught. They just need to be done over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Just roll me 50 ground balls, mom or dad, and let me run at them like a crazy person and try to see if I can control myself.
Yeah. I remember my dad saying his first lesson was when he played pro ball. It was like, that was it. And he used to have his dad put up a batting cage in their backyard, or there was a side lot, and he just hit. He just hit. And he said if he had a bad day, he didn't call up anyone. He said he just went back in the backyard and hit until he felt right.
Yeah.
And
that's how like the evolution of like drills would change with my dad. Like we'd go and hit, and we'd go high tee, inside tee. Don't hit the ball off the side of the cage. Don't, like, very basic cues just to be focused. But then as you see other people instruct, then you start to incorporate those into your training also. And that's kind of how he evolved and he used to do lessons for kids in the town also. Like, that's cool. Just kind of post up at the cage and go 30 minutes.
Help people out a little bit.
Would charge very little, but people were getting quality instruction at a relatively low cost, and he was able to stay around the game he loved.
And is that how you kind of really were drawn to coaching? Obviously, your dad, you said with a little basketball, baseball, kind of seeing him do those things growing up, seeing that, is that kind of what drew you? Because your sister also coached basketball in college.
So my sister's a health and physical education major also. She just graduated with her doctorate, so she's kind of gone out of the teaching side of things, but she wanted to be a health and physical education teacher. We always worked at camps growing up. Like we always did sports growing up. So it's kind of like, it's what I knew,
right?
So I always had aspirations, believe it or not, to run basketball camps.
Really?
Like growing up, like in my early 20s, like I used to do a lot more basketball group stuff because that's what I wanted to do. I used to go to a camp growing up called XL in basketball out of New Providence, and like Coach Frank Alaco ran it with a couple other people that were really good, Coach Sullivan and Coach Catano, and they kind of sparked my interest in doing it. Like I saw what they did and the impact that they had on the players, and I was like, that's what I want to do. Right. And that kind of like at 17, 18, 19, like piqued my interest, and then kind of just started to snowball from there.
So basketball, like, was that your favorite sport growing up? Is it safe to say that or no?
I had more successes, I believe, individually as a basketball player than I did as a baseball player. I mean, I was a good baseball player. I played on the varsity. I played in college. Like I always loved baseball. Basketball was always just something I was good at, and I used to practice just to try to be the best at it. But individually, I mean, we've talked about I scored 1,000 points up until 4 years ago. I think it was a kid I coached just broke the school record, but I was like the third or fourth all-time leading scorer.
I saw that. I did my research, Dave. I did my research.
I grew up in a small school, so I was like one of 5 at the time. Now there's 6 of us, but
that's so cool.
It was a goal of mine going into high school. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So my dad and I used to just go shoot until that's all I did was shoot.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to do some shooting tomorrow. We're going to do some shooting tomorrow.
I have to get some shots up today. A little rusty.
Yeah. What year did you start giving like hitting? And because I think like if you look at your Instagram, if I go back, you started a lot with hitting instruction. Correct?
I started the Coach Steinman platform during COVID because school, I was working remotely. I coached 3 high school sports at a time. Those weren't existent. I was just hanging out at home with my dad and my wife at the time. And like, I was like, all right, now we're starting to take the restraints off. I started doing some lessons outside at the park until the weather changed. And I got involved in a club organization that gave me access to more players. And I did more hitting until a couple people early on were like knocking a 9-year-old swing that I was working with. And I was like, I'm not happy that he's got great mechanics. I'm happy because he just hit 3 off the back of the cage, which is improvement from not being able to be balanced.
On social media, people were knocking.
Yes.
Really?
So I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not engaging in confrontation. And then I kind of went the other way and I started to follow some people. Like Coach Cologne has been like, he probably doesn't know, but he's been like a role model for what he did. And there's a couple others that I've kind of followed suit with and saw what they were doing and kind of went in that avenue. And I've kind of just ingrained myself in learning more about infield play and teaching it and educating it. And that's kind of the avenue that I've gone.
Would you say with your instruction now, do you do more softball or baseball, or is it equal?
I do far more softball now.
Really?
Yeah, I saw a shift, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, a shift. I started working with 1 or 2 softball players, and then 1 or 2 became 3 or 4, and then 3 or 4 became 4 or 5. And I just found it a little easier with my personality to coach female athletes. Just I felt that they were a little more receptive to the instruction at those those preteen years, like the 10, 11, 12, 13, like boys at that age can be challenging where some of them feel like they have all of the answers. And I'm not an in your face, like this is how you have to do it. Like this is what I'm trying to create, or this is what we're trying to create. Tell me what you feel. Tell me what you think we can work on. And then we attack it from that avenue. And I didn't feel like the young male athlete had that same communication skill that a young female athlete had.
Yeah.
And then 1 became 2, and then you work with 1 good softball player, and then they go tell their friends about it, and then they go tell their friends about it, and then I kind of just rolled with it.
Oh, so kind of fell into it almost. Do you still do any hitting instruction or no?
I do.
You do?
I do. I wouldn't say I do much young hitting instruction. Like I'll work with teenagers and high school players and stuff like that where it's not as fundamental. I think that there's a lot far better hitting instructors that have more. I can break down the swing, but like to teach it from the ground up, I feel like I'm a little bit removed from it because I've kind of
you've been so focused on the
infield side of things. So like I can teach somebody how to hit, but it's more about like adjustments based on already having a general understanding of what we're trying to do.
Right.
Not that I can't do it. I just I don't have the interest as I do if it was a first time infielder.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. What speaking of first time infielder, what age would you say is the best age to start private instruction?
Private instruction?
Yeah.
Teenage.
Maybe
if you're an advanced, like far advanced compared to like a 11 or 12-year-old. But I think anything before that, it's just about being athletic and learning how your body moves and changing speeds and changing directions. Like think about how we grew up learning how to play. I mean, there wasn't instruction necessarily provided to you. It was let's go play in the street.
Right.
You know, you're not going to run into the ball. So I'm going to slow myself down as I get there.
Right.
You know, you kind of figure it out from that sense. I think kids individualize or get too specific too early, and they lose the athleticism that's required to be good at multiple things. Mm-hmm. So I would shy away from it. I do it. I'd be lying if I said I didn't work with 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds. Do I think it's a necessity? Not as much.
Do you think that, again, because times have changed, like what you were just talking about growing up, you know, playing, whether it be stickball or wiffle ball in the backyard and just kind of learning those things. Do you feel like that happens as much now? So is there that need for private instruction because maybe they're not doing the same things that even a generation before us maybe were doing even more? I'm sure my father's generation looked at my generation and was like, you're not doing anything, you know? So I think that probably happens with every generation, but I mean, does that play a factor too?
I do think so.
You know,
I talk about it with the one guy I coach basketball with and teach with, who's kind of like a mentor to me. I talk to him like, kids nowadays, they don't do anything unless it's structured for them. It's like they have to show up to a park and have an adult structure practice or structure drills or structure a stickball game. Like they're not just calling 10 of their friends and like, hey, let's go play half field baseball where if you hit it to the left side, you're out. Yeah. You know, if we're all righties, we're going to hit it the opposite way today. And if you hit it to the left of second base, you're out. Like they don't do that now. Yeah. It needs to be organized by parents or by adults or by camp counselors. So in a sense, yes, like you need to be involved in some sort of individualized, but I think like group training or like classes at facilities are good. Like, do you need an hour one-on-one session with a private instructor at 10 when you don't know your right and left yet? No. But if you're not going to go practice on your own, getting involved in like small group or clamps and clinics to like learn those things would be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, though, even like the structure thing. I was just saying it to my wife the other day because I grew up going to parks all the time to play basketball. Like, you know, that's why I liked basketball because there was always people playing it. Yeah. You know, and it was hard. I didn't really get to go out and play baseball with a bunch of guys. You need too many people. Yeah. So, like, you can go play 3-on-3 with someone at a park. And the parks that I always used to play at locally, like, you know, I'll drive by them now and they're empty. And I never... I said it to her the other day. I was like, man, like I can't. When did that stop? Like I don't know when that stopped because like even to 10 years ago they were still doing it. So like I don't know. Like those parks used to be full. Yeah. I mean, it used to be packed, and now there's like no one there. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if it just seems like it has changed. I mean, even outside of baseball and other sports too. I mean, basketball I thought would have been one of the last ones to do it because it's so easy to play with people you don't know and just pick it up.
I also think that it has to do a lot with like the environment that you grow up in, like the resources that you have. Like if you have, like if everybody in the neighborhood goes out and plays, like,
that's true.
And not everybody has the Nintendos and the PlayStations and the Xboxes, like it really depends on the household and the community that you grow up in. Like if you live in a community where the parents are pushing the kids outside to go and play, I think you find like where my wife and I live, like there's one park where I think it's kids from all of the surrounding towns. Like there's basketball courts that run this way and then run this way, and we go by on a nice summer Saturday, and it's packed.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she's born and raised in Europe, where everything they do is outside. So, like, when we drive by a park and there's nobody outside, she's like, where is everybody? Why isn't anybody riding bikes? Like, why are... But it's just what she's used to. Yeah. You know, so we moved from one town to another where the kids in our neighborhood ride their bikes a lot, and it's nice. It's, like, refreshing to see the kids in the neighborhood playing.
That's cool, yeah. I heard you talk, kind of, it seemed like you hinted at it, that you have some sort of assessment sheet when you get a new student. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Walk me through that.
I mean, the first thing that I would do is I kind of I let them talk. Okay. Like I try to remove them from the parent or guardian that brings them there and let them talk about some things that they think they do well, some things that they feel like they don't do well. And then pretty much I have, like it's broken down by their feet and their hands and depending on who I'm working with and like how in depth they need to be. I do just kind of like hit them some ground balls or roll them some ground balls and kind of see.
And what are you looking for when you're doing that? Give me that breakdown.
How they move. Like I'm trying to see what type of athlete they are. So like we'll do footwork to start, and if they struggle to do like basic change of directions or basic footwork patterns, I know that maybe they're not as athletic as somebody else that can do it without that. So if I see somebody that needs that, we'll do a lot more athletic movements where we're involving like cone work and glove work, like learning how to move your feet, changing speeds, changing directions, and then maybe they have really good hands. So then maybe we don't focus so much on their hand play. It's more about getting their feet to be under control. And
so if you were to break it down, what are the main components that you'd be looking at?
I would say their hand-eye coordination would be the first one.
Hand-eye coordination.
I would say their feet, their body control, how they stop, change directions, and then how well they catch the ball.
Okay.
Well, then you try to combine them. So then do feet and hands together and see how well they do that. And then I'll see. So like if I'm hitting somebody to ground ball and like they're running into it and they're catching the ball between their feet, I know we need to kind of talk about body awareness and spatial awareness and playing out in front of your eyes. And then I'll do some hand-eye coordination stuff where they're stationary. Can they catch balls across their body with both hands? Can they do it moving? Can they do it running? And kind of just assess them as an athlete. And then once I kind of have an idea of how athletic they are and how much of a challenge they need in order to fine-tune those things, then we'll go from there. But I would say a lot of it has to do with their eyes, their feet, and their hands.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then throwing. I think that I don't ever remember being taught how to throw overhand. I'm not sure I threw properly overhand now that I look back at what people are instructing now. But I don't ever remember being taught. But now throwing plays a big component in it.
Do you see a lot of kids that throw improperly?
I think they need some fine-tuning and some things to be mindful of. So, like, we'll play catch first. Before I start hitting them with ground balls, like, we'll just play catch like you would if you were with an older brother or sister or parent or guardian or a friend, and I'll kind of just see how they do that. Yeah. And then I'll hit them some ground balls, and then based on those two things and what they say, we'll kind of go to work from there. And, like, the first one is very generic. Like, I'll just kind of walk them through, like, basic two-handed plays and some moderate backhands depending on how well they catch the ball. And then, like, I'll go home and do my homework and kind of prescribe based on what I see.
That's cool. Do you ever talk with them about like required practice time outside?
I encourage it all the time, because otherwise we always start from the same place we left off at the last time. And I try to, that's the conversation I have with player and parent or guardian. Like, we did great today. We accomplished a lot in an hour, but if you don't do anything between now and next week, then we're going to start all over. Like, we can't progress if you can't do these basic things, so can they find fielding posture? Like, do they know what fielding posture is? Do they know how to move their glove in and out of positions, like from their glove side to their two-hand to their backhand? Like, if they don't practice those things, we can't progress off of those things.
Have you ever had a student, because of no practice, that like you had to have a conversation with them about, continuing?
No, I probably could have, but deep down inside, like I don't know. I don't do this full time. Mm-hmm. So like if I did do it full time and I was on more of a constraint of like who I can see versus who I couldn't see, like maybe, but I try to give everybody at least some time just because I don't want to feel like I'm giving up on somebody. Yeah. But there are times where I get a little frustrated where I just continue to remind them, like, you have to practice.
I remember it didn't happen very often, but because it was always a struggle, right? You're doing lessons, just trying to get guys to practice and girls to practice outside of the session, because I feel like a lot of times, even parents, sometimes they don't realize, they think the lesson is it's like the magic pill, right? Of like, I'm not hitting well, so I'm going to go take a lesson and we're going to fix it today. It's like, that's not how it works, right? I think I did lessons for 10 years, but there was, I think, only 2 kids, but there were 2 kids. It was just every week. It was the same thing. And they would come every week and they would do 0 practice in between. And you could see it. It was just obvious when they showed up, right? So you could always tell, right? And there was a point, and I could tell their parents were frustrated because I would have the same conversation with the kid every week. Hey, how much do you practice? I didn't practice, right? And so I told them, 2 people I gave an ultimatum for. I said, listen, what I feel like I'm doing, I feel like I'm grabbing the wallet out of your dad's pocket and I'm just taking money from it. And I said, I don't feel comfortable with that. Yeah. I go, there's a point where I don't feel comfortable with us doing this. I said, because I'm telling you the same thing every week. Mm-hmm. I said, and I don't want to do that. Right. I said, I know your dad doesn't want me to do that. I go, so I said, we got to figure something out. I said, if we're not going to, do something, but it took a long time to even get that point. And it was because I felt like the parents were like, also feeling the same frustration that I was, because it's like when you're not progressing, it's frustrating.
I think it's important. I do think that from like a personal reflection standpoint, I could do that. I probably should do that from time to time. It's just I haven't yet.
Yeah, no, it's a tough conversation to have, obviously, you know.
There, but I think it's important so that you can focus your attention on the players that do want to practice.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, and it was more, I wanted the parent to know my heart, right? Too. It was like, because I knew they were seeing it, and you know, kids, I think sometimes just take it for granted that their parents are paying all this money for them to come to instruction. Yeah. And I also wanted to get that across to the kid. That like, listen, like your parents are paying good money for you to be here,
right?
And it's almost, you're disrespecting that,
yeah.
You know. And it's not even like you had to practice hours a day. Right. Like we're talking, you know, a little bit, right. Just a little, you know, would be great. I'd live with a little right now, just you know, just something.
I try to do it often where I'm kind of periodically checking in throughout the week. Like, hey, how did we play this week?
That's
like,
awesome.
What are some things that you see? Everybody's got Game Changer now.
Yeah.
So like you can
follow it.
I can get video from the parents. Like if I send a text like, oh, they made this error today. You got to zoom in on this clip. So I kind of get an idea where like I'm investing what I believe to be in the kid by checking in on them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Where not everybody has that time. So like I understand, like that's where I find I'm a little bit different than other people. Like,
that's impactful for the student though. Like that means a lot to the parent and the kid that you do that.
I try to explain it to people. Like I find that because right now I travel at the college level where I coach, and I travel to the high school team that I coach. I find that I'm the most impactful as a coach when I can connect with the players. And if I don't have the time to have a conversation about like, how's your day going? How was class today? Like, I lose a little bit about what makes me me. You know, like I think that's why I'm able to get the most out of most of the players is there's a level of trust where like I'm invested in them as a person. So if I challenge them, it's not like, why is he being so rude or mean, or why is he always on top of me? Like it comes from a place of caring. And I think that's just me as a person.
No, I think you're right. And I think, I mean, was the quotes like, you know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. You know, so I mean, that's especially with younger players too. And I think it's with everyone, but with youth players, that's really important.
Yeah.
And to have someone go out of their way to reach out and stay in contact. Again, I think that means so much to kids. And then it makes your word when you're telling them something, I think, you know, way more powerful or more impactful. They want to listen because they know how much you're invested into them, and they know you're doing it because you want them to be better.
And I played for people growing up that if I asked, I was never told no. Like, I mean, I'd say over the last 18 months, like people would ask me why I do what I do and why I do it the way I do it. And that's why actually I got this tattoo that says "Pay It Forward" because I felt like that's what I was kind of telling everybody. So I just got this as a gentle reminder, like when things get tough, like you're paying it forward for the people that were so good to you growing up.
Would you say, obviously we talked about your dad, but that basketball coach?
1,000%.
That's the guy? What was his name?
Coach Martin.
Coach Martin.
Yeah. So
What made him so much different?
He's just invested in every person. I mean, I coach with him now. I've been coaching with him now for, this will be 15 years. Wow. And I played for him for 3. And I work with him, like we have a relationship. It's almost like a father-son relationship just based on what we've been through and stuff like that. He's just there for every player. You know, no matter what, like you call him, no matter what he's doing, you're going to get the response that you called him for. Like, hey, can we go shoot tonight, or can you open the gym? Like he wasn't going to be at the school, but he would go and sit in his office and open the gym for you so you can go work out. Like, and even to this day, like if I have a question about something professionally,
he's the guy.
He's the first person that I would call to get the answer.
Was there ever a time when you were young that like something came up where you didn't really want to, even though you had a great relationship with your father, that you didn't really want to chat with your father about it, and you would go to your coach?
I think that's with most parents. Like there's certain things that
for sure
that you don't want to ask or you don't want to talk about, so you go to somebody else that has no stake in the game. Yeah, like they're going to look at the question, the problem, the concern for what it is, and not that's my dad. Like you're going to do what's best for you. Like I think you're being a little like right. At least from a kid's perspective, that's what you're feeling like. You know, dad's going to be a little. Even as an adult, like there's still things that I'll go and talk to other people about, so I can get like a candid response and not the response that I need to hear. Yeah. Like tell me what you think I should do based on the information that I've given you. Yeah, I think that's so important for kids to have someone like that in their life growing up. You know, and I think that's where coaching
I think it's the most rewarding. I'm sure you're that guy for kids. That's
so.
what we, and I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of coaching is that, right? And I think in my experience also, parents really appreciate that too, because I think as a parent, you understand that there are times that your kid may not want to bring a certain thing to you, but to know that there's someone else in their life that's going to be a positive influence, that's going to steer them in the right direction, when maybe they're not going to come to you, but they're going to go to that person and have that trust. Like that's like invaluable.
You can try all the time just to be somebody that they can count on and have a listening ear, even if it's not athletics related. Like as a health and phys ed teacher, like I really try to do my best to meet and know all of the kids in the school. Now I may know one student far better than I know another student, but I try to have some idea of who I'm talking to when we're engaging in conversation, because I think
how many kids are in your school?
650.
Whoa.
So it's not a big school by any means. Compared to
some of these real big ones.
I mean, the high school that I teach at is the biggest in the state. So like where I coach at and where I teach at are two different. So it would be impossible for me to achieve that goal where I coach.
Right.
But the district that I teach in, I also went to. So I'm relatively familiar with everybody from pre-K to 12, since I used to do a lot more stuff with pre-K to 12.
And they're probably familiar with you really well too. Obviously, if you went to the school and stuff like that, and being
and I did pre-K clinics, kindergarten clinics. So I got this senior class that just graduated was my first pre-K clinic.
Oh wow!
So I mean, I was with them from the time they were 4 until the time they were 18. Maybe not every year or every day.
Wow!
But I've known them for 14, 15 years. So.
That's cool. That's got to be rewarding to see them graduate like that.
That
must have been a special moment.
And it's easier to coach them because you can challenge them, because, like I said a little while ago, it's coming from a place of genuine care.
And they know that. Talk to me a little bit about, and this doesn't have to be about our training gloves, but you use other training tools as well. How important do you think it is to use like training aids during your instruction or with development?
I think it's important. I think I mean, I like the gloves for the reason that there is no instruction that goes into using it. Like if I give it to a 12-year-old, we're going to use a 9 3/4 inch glove. We're using the 975 today because we're just focusing on catching the ball in a smaller surface area. Like I don't have to teach them how to catch it in the surface area. If they don't catch the ball, it's because there is an inefficiency somewhere along the way. So I like training tools and training aids that require little instruction on how to use it. So the training gloves, they come out in a variety of ways. I mean, I lay them out. I let the player pick on the day, depending on who it is and how often we work together, but I love them. That's awesome. It also increases the level of difficulty. So when you start to work with your higher level players where they can do the routine stuff really well with the comfort of their own gloves, giving them something to increase the level of difficulty is only going to fine tune their skills, again, without having to come up with a quote unquote new drill. Like you don't need new drills to make somebody a good player. You just need to increase the level of difficulty to fine tune what they're doing with their skill set.
Do you think there's a point where there's too many training aids?
I think there's a lot. I see a lot that are out there. And when I first started, I tried to see everything because I was just getting started. I didn't know what was good, and now I've kind of like narrowed down what I use and who I work with and things like that, just because I don't need 1,000 things. I would rather have 1 or 2 really good things that I can convert to on any time. So I think it's a matter of finding what you need as a coach and or player, and then just utilizing it to the best of your ability. You don't need 1,000 different things.
I mean, and obviously, we sell training aids. So, I always tell people when they're asking, because we have like 30 different models, and that's a lot of models. And people are like, why do you have so many in it? And I always say, it depends on what you're looking for, right? I mean, like, depending on what you need for you as an individual and what you're looking on improving, then maybe you don't need all 30 of them. You know what I mean?
That's what I tell people when they reach out to see which glove they should get. I'm like, here's my favorite.
Right.
But the players that I work with, they don't like it as much because of how challenging it is. What are you using it for?
Right. Yeah.
And I'll give you feedback.
An
opinion, not feedback, but an opinion.
What do you think is the most underdeveloped or underpracticed defensive, like in defense, I guess?
I'd say catching and throwing, like the basic fundamental skills of just catching the ball and throwing the ball.
Yeah.
If you can catch it and throw it at a high rate, then the other stuff will be a little bit easier increase your skill set.
If you were to take a guess on like percentage wise on like time we spend on practicing defensive skills, break down practicing, what percentage is practicing throwing and what percentage is practicing fielding?
I think that like in an individual session with me or like a general.
Let's go general.
I'd say not enough. I'd say that the emphasis on.
Give me a percentage.
Well, you figure.
Take a guess.
50.
50%. You think 50%?
I'd say less than 50% because people focus more on hitting.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, like, if let's just say we're doing a defensive lesson, some kid walks into an indoor facility in, Pennsylvania today, and they get a fielding lesson. How much of that lesson is going to be spent on that defensive lesson is going to be spent on throwing, and how much is going to be spent on fielding?
Most of it's going to be spent on fielding.
Yeah.
Would
you say
80%,
80%?
85% of it?
I think that's probably
maybe
fair.
we'll play catch.
Right. Yeah. Right. To warm up.
Catch. But then once it gets going, and as a coach, like I've tried to be the opposite. Like an hour is not long enough. Yeah. And I tell everybody that all the time. Like we're going to schedule an hour, and if I don't have anybody after you, chances are we're going to go over an hour just because I don't want to rush through things with you. Like throwing could take us 20 minutes. And that's probably not enough, like focusing on the mechanics and like how it relates to infield play and how it relates to everything. But when you go I see it all the time at high school practices and at youth practices, like there is no instruction when the kids go play catch, and you hear it with everybody that you talk to. Go down the line and get loose. And what do? They just kind of like just flip the ball back and forth, and there's no emphasis on the skill of catching the ball, breaking from center, throwing the ball to a target. Are you aiming for his face? Are you aiming for the logo on his chest? Yeah. Are you aiming for his glove shoulder? Like, there needs to be an aspect of it. And then are you catching the ball with your eyes behind it? Or are you just, like, reaching? Yeah. And it gets frustrating as a coach when I go to a team practice and I'm like, move your feet, catch the ball with your eyes in your glove. Like, get yourself behind the baseball. Like, and they just look at you. I'm like,
yeah.
But that's a skill.
Right. Like,
it's something that needs to be repeated over and over and over and over again.
I shouldn't say I was surprised, but I have a friend that does some analytics for ESPN, and I messaged him and asked him to give me a breakdown of errors in Major League Baseball and how many were infield errors, because outfield a little different, but infield errors, how many were because of a throw, or how many were fielding.
If I had to guess, 60 or 70% throwing errors.
So it's that you guessed a little high. It's 49%. 49. It's almost 50-50. So like, and which I think is, I mean, at the youth level, I think it's actually higher throwing than fielding, if I were to take a guess. But even at 50-50, we don't practice 50-50. Yeah. I know most players don't. Yeah. And I think that's a incredibly under practiced area of defense is just throwing accurately. Yeah. And I think it goes back to, it roots to where you were talking about is the focus is not there when they're quote unquote playing catch. Mm-hmm. They don't view it as, most kids, I should say, don't view it as practice time.
Right.
And in reality it is. I always tell people like throwing mechanics, you'll have a kid come in that has poor throwing mechanics, and I've always found, and I could be wrong on this, and I would be curious to pick your brain on that guy that you're friends with that does a lot of the throwing mechanics. But I've always found that throwing mechanics are one of the hardest things to break. And I always tell people, I said, because you do that more than you do anything. Mm-hmm. When you go to a field, you play catch and you throw, and then in the game you throw, and then you're in the backyard with your dad and you're throwing. Yeah. You throw more baseballs than you hit. You throw more than you field. It's just about anything. Right. And if you're a pitcher, then that number increases a ton. So if you have a flaw, unless you're really focused on improving it every single throw, which is what you have to do, right, you're only reinforcing a poor habit every single throw.
And I think that the high level throwing and like Adrian, a 212 athlete who I'm working with this upcoming weekend, like they do such a good job of like fixes to flaws. Like they look at an athlete and they say, this is what you're doing. Here are some ways that you can fix it. I think kids now, like they thrive on like skill cues. Like they do really well of you giving them something to think about with the skill, and then they go and apply it. But it just takes a lot of practice. But there are coaches like that focus primarily on the overhand throwing that are great resource for everybody. Like try to study what they do and then implement it. Probably not as good as them yet, but I'm trying to learn how they do it so that I can best help the people I see regularly.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, like, that was always something that, and again, I could help a kid and, you know, you can give them the direction, but that was always something that I struggled with as an instructor is really, you know, you have a 14-year-old kid come in with an awful throwing mechanics, and you're like trying to get him to get back. It's like, man, like it was always a struggle. So I like when I watch those guys that really specialize in that, I like, honestly, that like those couple of those people, I guess, you know, Tom House, I guess, you know, was a big guy for many years, but outside of Tom House, it didn't seem like there were a lot of people that were doing that, like specializing in that. And man, what a great, like, that's awesome. I think that's incredible. And you're right. I just learning from that is huge. Yeah. And if you could help a kid at a young age, you know, cause before they get the bad habits with some of those cues and different things, man, they're going to set them up for success more for the future, for sure.
Yeah. They need to play catch more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I'll give a shout out to Ground Up, Julius Gaines. He just did a question. I want to ask you this question. He asked a question on his Instagram. I don't know if you saw it the other day. It said, what did he say? So coaches describe rhythm in relation to fielding. Did you see it?
Yeah.
In relation to fielding, in a simple term. So let me ask you, what would you say? What would you answer to that question?
Man, simple.
Yeah, I know. That's the hard part.
I would say, I want to just generalize it and just being athletic. You know, like I think if you're an athlete, you have a lot of things working in your favor. So like if you have good rhythm, you're able to read speed and pace and direction and hops of the ball, which then allow your body to move naturally to it. Mm-hmm. So just having good movement patterns, like just being efficient with your movements.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I was thinking about how I would even answer that question when I saw it. It seems like such a simple question, but then as you think about it, you're like, okay. And I think it was like, what did I say? I was rhythm is like when movement, timing, and control come together. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, like those three elements when they kind of like there was a marriage between those three elements, like that would be rhythm, you know. And that's hard to do. And athleticism, it helps with that, right? Because a lot of kids, if they have, you know, great athleticism, that comes naturally. You know.
Yeah, it's hard to teach somebody that doesn't have that same natural athleticism. Like you try to teach them how to move. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, we got to do it a little bit more.
Right. You know? I think of probably like in music too. I'm sure there's some music people that are like, some people don't have rhythm. Right. Is that you?
My wife cracks on me all the time. I have no rhythm, and like I'm like, if I hear music, I can't move to it the same way that somebody else that. But growing up, I didn't grow up in a household that had music playing all the time, and like dancing wasn't something that we did in our household. Where other people, that's all they know.
That's part. Yeah, they grew up with it.
So like, to me, I don't know.
That's like funny. Yeah.
She's like, I don't know why. She's like, why don't you move like that? I'm like, because I just don't hear it the same way you do. If I hit you a ground ball, you wouldn't.
Yeah, that's right.
The same way that I do.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's too funny. If we talk about your Instagram, I mean, you have obviously a really large following. I know you hate, you know, when I said social media influencer, I'm sure your skin crawled when I said that, but I had to throw it in there. But if I went back kind of on your Instagram page and was just kind of looking at some of your earlier stuff, and I know you've talked about this before, but like you had a video go viral, and I want to pull it up, and I kind of want you to walk me through it. And I think this is the video because I mean,
no warning. You're just gonna throw one up.
I'm gonna throw it up. Yeah, I'm gonna throw it up here. I think this is the one.
Oh yeah.
Is this the one right here?
The one.
Okay. Talk me through this. This is not a drill that you were doing, but who is this?
I think it's Bobby Dickerson when he was with the Phillies.
Okay. And then talk me through this drill.
I saw that. I thought that was super unique and just getting your body and your eyes behind the ball. You know, working on creating space and exaggerating, getting that back foot behind the ball, and then learning how to get your eyes back with it, like moving all together. Yeah. You know, I saw that and I was like, wow, something so simple helps a professional athlete. And like, if you look at my posts, like a lot of people do the breakdown things really well. Like they take a major leaguer and they break stuff down and they do it to like the minute details. Mm-hmm. I've tried to make my repost videos on things that like watching professionals do the fundamental things day in and day out, which is what makes them so good. Like harping on the practice side of what makes the greats the greats. So like when I saw this, maybe I saw it on, it may have been on somebody's Insta. I don't remember where I saw it. And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I had never seen this video. And I was trying to go back and, just kind of see what video really kind of blew up for you.
Yeah,
and
it was that one.
Yeah, this one.
It was
I
that
don't even
one.
know this one. It went to like 13,000 likes. You went from having like, a couple hundred likes and then 13,000.
That video right there. I don't remember why or how. And that's what kind of prompted me to go into
It's April 8th, 2021.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was, you had said you started in COVID. So 20.
I think
So it's about a year in.
Yeah, about a year in.
About a year into it. That blew up.
And I went into like a rabbit hole, and like now I try to find videos of.
You're the best at that, by the way.
Yeah.
You are
Professionals finding doing fundamental things, which is why I like the videos that Coach Kai posts, because he's doing fundamental drills with some of the best players in the world. Like you can listen volume up and get his coaching cues and things like that, but just watch the best coaches do the simplest fundamental drills and watch the outcome that they get. And it's hours and hours of practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the simplicity of that drill, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, really, like when I saw it, I had never seen that drill before. And I'm like, man, like that's how simple, but an awesome drill.
Yeah.
A great concept. You could feel it, your body getting to the right position. I mean, it was great, honestly.
And sometimes I'll go back and I'll watch the videos that I've made or that I posted and like refresh my brain on some things I used to do that I've kind of gotten away from. I go back to that, and now I'll do a drill like that where we're working on just creating space and catching it with your bare hand.
Yeah.
And then I'll throw that in there. And I don't know.
Yeah, I like that one.
Some kids will do that drill and they'll be like, man, that really clicks for me getting my eyes behind the ball and my body behind the ball, where others that may not feel the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what it helps to have like a large, pool of drills kind of in your head that you can use, kind of use for different people. And not to get on a tangent, I don't even have this something to talk about, but with private instruction, one of my biggest pet peeves was cookie cutting with people, and instructors that would do that. That would just, no matter who you are, you came in, we were doing this drill, we're doing this drill, we're doing this drill, and then we cycle you out, the next guy, we're doing this drill, same thing. And I always found that incredibly frustrating and not as beneficial to the student, because everyone's different.
Right.
Everyone has different flaws, everyone has different strengths, and trying to isolate them and then do specific drills to help with those, whatever those are. I think is really important. But you got to have obviously the drills in the back of your head to be able to use them, pull them out.
The one thing that I'll say, since I've started, like I've grown as a coach and as like a professional in teaching, like just continuing to learn, like just going headfirst into listening to people. Like there's so many great coaches out there that are doing so many great things, but in order to be a constant learner, you have to be a constant learner if you want to be a good teacher.
Yeah.
So like you're learning from those that do it equal or better than you, or doing it at a higher level than you, how they do it and how you can apply it to those kids that you have in front of you.
Yeah.
Because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. That's for sure. Let's shift a little bit. I want to talk about, because you have a unique perspective. So you coached travel for a while. Do you still coach travel?
I don't.
Okay. So you coach travel, you coach high school, obviously you do private instruction. So you've been on both sides of this aisle, where I'm sure a student would come in to your private instruction and they'll tell you that their coach for high school or travel ball is saying, hey, what you're doing is wrong. What you're teaching, whatever, is like, we disagree with that. And then I'm sure you have on the other side where you're the high school coach and you're one of your players is getting instruction from a private instructor and comes in and says, well, my hitting coach told me to do this, X, Y, Z, different than what you're telling me to do. How do you handle that?
I think the first thing is I have respect for all coaches. So like if you're in the coaching field, I have a respect for you right off the bat. So just because we may not sync up eye to eye in terms of what we're teaching or how we're teaching it, doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong. So I try to remind parents and players, like, just because he's not doing it the way we're working on here doesn't mean he's wrong. And just because he's saying that I'm not doing this right, that I'm wrong. Like, you need to take information from both sides and put it into what works for you. Because at the end of the day, the game is the game, and the skills of the game haven't really changed all that much. Yeah. Still have to catch, still have to throw, you still have to see the ball, you still have to hit the ball. Yeah. Everything that happens, like, it's not played in it's not played in black or white. It's played in the middle grounds between there, and like trying to navigate that. And it's tough because some coaches, high school in particular, don't necessarily view the private instruction as beneficial. Like they want the kids not to do that. And I'm on both sides. So like, I think it's important that you listen to me as your high school coach. But if your hitting coach is telling you something else, explain to me in what context are you using it so I know that you have an understanding of it. And then I'll take what you just told me with my understanding of how I like to instruct it. And let's see if we can come up with a third way to get that product that we're looking for. Yeah. You know, so it's a constant conversation. Like, I'm not the end all be all, and I don't really think any coaches are. Like, I think you need to take something from everybody and apply it how it fits to you as the individual.
And I would think like fielding is obviously, I'm sure there's stuff in fielding that's controversial, but like hitting is probably more controversial, you know, like when it comes to just everything, I guess, in hitting, it seems like there's a debate about it. It's a tough balance, you know, and because I'm with you. I was the same way. I never wanted to disrespect any coach, you know. And the thing is, you also want the player to not disrespect the coach, and that's really important too. Because I feel like sometimes the player's like, "Well, I'm going to go to my hitting instructor now and like tell him what my coach said." It's like, "Whoa, no, we're not doing that."
Right.
Like, first of all, you know, your coach tells you something at practice. You look him in the eye, you listen to him, you nod your head yes, and you try to do what he's trying to do. I used to tell kids, like with their parents' permission, I would say, you know, I feel like things should be filtered through one voice. Now, whether, you know, like whatever it is, you know, like, and if that's me or you're going to another instructor and your parents are paying X amount of dollars, right? You know, every week, an hour, you know, whatever it is. Like hopefully the coach has enough, you know, common sense and has enough grace to be filtered. So it's like, okay, so your coach in high school said this at practice. Okay, like obviously in practice, 100% you need to listen to your coach. You just do whatever he says, right? And then at our next lesson, we'll talk about it.
Right.
Let's talk about it. You know, if it's something directly opposite to whatever we're doing, oh, well, okay, then maybe we don't do it, like, you know, long term. But generally, there's always something really good, you know, from whatever they're saying. But at least now we're filtering. Like, let's not just buy into whatever he says, you know, forever. Like, because your parents are paying. Let's filter it through this voice and we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. I always felt like that was a good way. Cause even with my father, cause I learned that, I mean, I had a dad that played pro ball for 13 years, you know, teach me how to hit, how to feel, whatever. So like, but he would take me to other people occasionally, not often. It's not like I did weekly lessons with anyone, but, he would take me to other people because a different voice is helpful. Yeah. You know, sometimes, you know, they would say the same thing in a different way. Right. And it would click. And I think that's really important. Yeah. But everything was filtered through my father. Right. So there was never anything I was just going to all of a sudden just incorporate into my swing or into whatever without like, you know, dad being, hey, we're going to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's just having a respect. Like one coach isn't better than another.
Correct.
You know, like we all have something to offer. Hopefully we're all doing it because we want to try to impact the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
In one way, shape, or another. Like, I think I'm kind of shifting where in my lessons, we talk a lot about like what to do when you don't get 10 out of 10. You know, like the goal is going to be perfect, but you're never going to be perfect. So we're going to strive 10 for 10, but if we finish 8 or 9 out of 10, like that's still a very productive drill set that we just did. How are we going to handle it? Like if you can teach kids to be confident in themselves when their games turn on, and they're not going to be thinking about what they did in their lesson. Yeah. They're going to trust the confidence that they have in their skill, and they're going to just go to work.
And that goes back to that practice. Right. It goes back to the reps, right? Muscle memory.
So we spend a lot of time on like, it's good. We'll talk about your skills and we'll talk about this, but like, could you have created more space? Yeah. But did you catch the ball and transition to your throw? You're good. You got the out because in the game, that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. 100%.
No college coach is going to be like, oh man, he could have gotten 6 inches deeper on that ball to really bury his eyes behind his glove. Yeah. He's going to say, man, he did a great job catching a bad hop and making a good throw. Like,
that's such a good perspective. You know, that's such a good perspective because I think kids get caught up in, because especially with how much instruction is out there, is they're too hard on themselves in certain areas, when ultimately it's about, we do lessons, we do instruction so we could perform better and we can have more success in games, right?
And how do you do that? By confidence. You believe in yourself, you believe in what you've done, you don't have to think about it come game time. Like,
Absolutely.
even with younger kids, I'm like, did you catch the ball? If they answer the ball, yes. I'm like, did you transition to a balanced throwing position? The answer is yes. Did you throw the ball and hit one of the targets I have up there? They said yes. I'm like, that was a great rep then.
It's a win.
Did you catch the ball 2 inches underneath your chin, not far enough out in front of your eyes? Maybe.
Yeah.
But we got the out. So
Right.
now we only need 20 more as a coach.
Right.
You know?
That's true. What with your coaching during travel, how long did you coach travel?
I did it with one organization. I believe it was 3 years. I kept a group from the time they were like new 10s, like the back end of their 9-year-old year up until they're 12. So I guess 3 years.
What is or do you have any? I would imagine you have maybe one or two if you coach that even just that long. Any crazy parent stories? What's the craziest parent story that you've had in coaching? It could be high school too. I mean, I guess.
I was in I felt like I was in a little bit of a different situation simply because I had no kids in the program. I wasn't affiliated to the program. And I was simply a coach / teacher that wanted to coach baseball. So I felt that my emphasis was on their development. And I would sacrifice maybe winning a game to making sure all 12 players had what I considered to be a positive experience. So the crazy stories, I don't have all that many other than a couple parents.
What's the worst one, though?
A couple people were telling me that I was favoring individual players over their son. And I'm like, it's tough to have that conversation because they're looking at it from one perspective. Like they're looking at their son as the best catcher on the team or the best shortstop on the team. They're not looking at it like this person may be a little bit better. That's why they're getting 4 innings there. My son's getting 2. Or one was, son wasn't a second baseman. He was a shortstop. And I'm like, I mean, if you play second, you're still playing in the middle of the infield. Oftentimes, everybody's a shortstop that gets converted to another position because, let's be honest, if you're a coach, you're going to put your strongest players up the middle.
So, how old was that when they were saying that?
10.
Of course.
I'm like, to be honest, if you're asking my opinion, looking at what your son's going to look like in high school, he's probably not going to be big enough or strong enough to play on the left side of the infield. He's probably going to transition into a really good second baseman. Yeah. He's a great athlete. He's got great hands. He's got good actions. He's just not going to be 6'3" with 90 plus across the diamond.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Right, yeah, right.
That's why a lot of people's playing careers end.
Right.
Because they don't meet the eye test.
It happens. It happens.
You know?
So there was this year there's an article about it's a wild story. A little league in Philadelphia suburb. Okay. I'll read a little bit of it, and I just want to get your take on it. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically, in a nutshell, a parent was upset. A parent was upset about this little league, basically cutting the season short. It says here, Majid complained to officials about the decision to end the in-house season early for the second straight year, so more advanced players could begin competing on summer travel teams. He felt it unfair to intramural players who wouldn't get to compete in a playoff to crown a champion. Majid tells Axios League leaders reversed the decision after he contacted a district coordinator who relayed the parents' concerns to the board members. He thought the issue settled until the flyover. So what the flyover is, so he basically complained that the season was ending early, right? They changed it, whatever. Someone paid to have a plane fly over the Little League fields to say, his name is Zach Majid, or Majid, I think. Zach Majid. So they flew his name over because I guess people were upset that the league, they made this change. So someone literally paid to have a plane fly over the Little Leagues to put this guy's name out there. Give me your reaction to that story. That happened this year. Wow. That was this year. That was in May of this year.
The one crazy thing is I was looking up there, and I teach in a town called Springfield. So when I saw Springfield Little League, I said, good thing you led up the conversation that it was in the suburb of Philadelphia. But I think that's where youth sports is trending in the wrong direction at times, is that you get people that have the wrong intentions in mind. Like if it's a rec league or an in-house league, like one, why would you end a season early so that the more advanced players can go play somewhere else? Like why not let all players play for the entirety of that season, and maybe the middle of the pack kid or the below average kid really has a good experience. Maybe he wins a championship and then wants to spend the next 18 months practicing his skills, and by the time he's 13 is an all-American player.
Yeah.
You know, so like I think the big picture is in that bullet point there is the big picture is it's about the kids. All kids in the program. If you're more advanced and you don't like the level of play within the program that you're in, go find somewhere else to play.
Right.
Don't take it away from your average player.
Yeah, it seemed like I mean, again, I don't know the full details of this, but it seemed like a fairly reasonable request.
I mean, to go above and beyond to put somebody's name on a plane and fly it over the Little League.
It seems a little petty.
I mean, what are we doing?
What are we doing? What type of example is?
Are we setting for the kids?
Yeah, right.
You know, you may not be happy about it, but deal with it.
Yeah. Doesn't that seem like that? Like I feel like, and I don't know if it's just because social media wasn't around when we were younger, and again, the generation before us, but it just seems like every week I get another video of there's a fight on the field. Yeah. Parents are between umpires or two coaches together, or a kid does something and a parent jumps in. It just seems like it's becoming more common.
Yeah.
I don't know if that could be a perception too. Maybe it was always happening and we just weren't aware of it.
I think that the access to like camera phones is playing more of a factor into it, because what's the first thing that happens when confrontation arises? Everybody takes out their phone. That's even true. If you should be separating the confrontation, everybody takes their phone out to record. Point. I mean, I umpired for 7 years, like high school games and stuff like that before I started coaching full time. So from the time I was 17 to the time I was 24, like I was in umpiring. I wanted to be a professional umpire.
Really?
Yeah, I wanted to go to the Jim Edmonds umpiring school in Florida, but then I started teaching like right after college, so I never pursued that. I loved umpiring, but like I used to get some nasty things from, I just go over there and be like, what are we doing here? It's an 11-year-old game. I don't understand. And I tell the coaches beforehand, like, we're not doing this. If you have a question, you can come talk to me like an adult.
Did you have anyone really like flip out at you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I maybe threw one person out.
Really?
And I'm not a confrontational
right.
person.
So I'll just absorb
it. I'll take it. But I think in one person, I just said enough. And I think I was even doing a recreation basketball game. That's what it was. I gave the coach a double technical foul and threw him out because he just kept yelling and screaming at me. I'm like, what do we do? It's a 5th grade basketball game. Why are you yelling at me?
Yeah.
I'm getting paid $12 an hour from the township to do this game so these kids can play.
That's too funny.
Yeah, I hit him with a double tech and I threw him out.
I remember when I was young, I mean, one of my friends, they were umping to whatever, some local league, and I think I was 14 years old, you know what I mean? And so he was like, oh, come ump the bases with me. And I blew this call a second. I mean, I blew it. It was so bad. It was really, really bad. And I knew it. And but the call was made, right? And like, so, and I'm 14, right? And this guy comes out and just starts flipping out at me. And I remember just looking at him like, I'm never umpiring again.
Ever.
This is the worst job ever. I don't know why people do this. And honestly, ever since that I was 14, I think kids should umpire, because I had a lot of respect for umpires after that. Because in my head, the whole time he's yelling at me, I'm thinking to myself, I know I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I know. I 100% know that I'm wrong here, but I can't do anything about it, and I can't say it because then you'll get really mad.
I would go back and say, listen, I may have missed it, but at the end of the day, it's done.
Yeah,
so let's move past it. But.
Yeah, it was at 14. I didn't have the wisdom to do that.
No,
I just sat there and took it.
The emphasis is in the wrong spot. A lot of it has to do with people are running it as a business, and obviously, if the business has success in terms of trophies, scholarships, and things like that, like the business does well. But the emphasis on development and life lessons is sometimes lost in translation when people focus on the wrong things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a competitive environment like that, people that don't have an educational background, they go from 0 to 100 because in their profession, it's maybe okay.
Yeah.
And they don't have that regulatory skill of regulating their emotions from going from 0 to 100. So they're impulsive and they
snap.
And then they look back and they're like, man, I just acted like a.
You hope they do. You hope they do, right? Sometimes I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to pay someone to fly a plane, that's next level. That's a conscious decision. I mean, that's not like reacting in the moment at an umpire because he made a bad call. That's I got to go make a phone call.
Right.
I got to pay this guy. They said in the article, it says I think it was between $600 to $1,200 to fly that plane.
Should have just had a sign made and hanging on the fence.
Yeah, well, don't give me ideas. Whoever it was, don't give me ideas.
Could have done it for a quarter of the price.
Oh man, that's funny. All right, well let's start wrapping it up. I want to just before we're done, do you have any like advice for, let's just say, young players that are really kind of getting into baseball? Let's just say an infielder, because that's kind of your specialty. But what type of advice would you give a kid? As far as any type of advice. I mean, it could be for college. It could be, just type attitude. I know you've touched on a lot of things already that I think is really good for kids to listen to, as far as confidence being one of them, But if there's any kind of like something that you like to leave them with.
I mean, from like playing at the next level, whether it be high school or college, like with social media and Game Changer being the way that it is, you're always being watched. So how do you want to be remembered every time you're on the field? Is it somebody that plays with great effort and enthusiasm and passion for the game? Or is it somebody that pouts and complains and walks and makes the game about themselves instead of the team? So like, you're always being watched. So make sure once you step on the field, you're representing yourself in a way that you want people to see you. And then afterwards, you can self-reflect and do what it is that you need to grow as an individual. From like a player, youth to high school to college, like there's no such thing as bad practice. So just make sure that you're investing the time and the effort and the energy in yourself, and put every drop of effort that you have in your game, because one day it's going to be over and you can't go back and change it. Yeah. I tell people all the time, like, you have the rest of your life to work. So if you're trying to balance between your skill development and work, make sure you're finding time for your skill development, because you're going to work for 40 years after your playing career is over. You don't want to wish I could have done this or I could have done that. Take 30 minutes, an hour a day, and invest in something that you want to do. And if athletics is it, put that time aside for yourself and make sure you're giving it your best, whether it be by yourself or whether it be with a parent, whether it be with a coach.
That's awesome. That's great advice. That's awesome. Well,
love it.
Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it. And then if anyone that wants to follow him, we'll put all his links to his Instagram and everything in the description below to this video, man. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right.